This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Flicker of reels, the shadows crawl. Curtains rise, a ghostly sprawl. The frames are whispers, the stories call. The tractors hum in a hollow tune. Moonlight cuts through a velvet gloom. Is it a dream or a real too soon? Step into the screen where the dark turns keen. Join you with the Cinephile, unseen. The tales twist and turn as the silent light burns. A world unknown where the shadows yearn.
Hello and welcome, listeners, to Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast, where we take a deep dive into the world of horror cinema, from the eerie classics to the latest spine-chilling releases. Join me as I explore the history, themes, and artistry of horror one film at a time. Whether you're a seasoned horror fan or just stepping into the shadows, this journey is for you. So dim the lights, embrace the fear, and let's talk horror. And let's do that on episode 354. I'm your tour guide of David Garrett Jr., recording out of Columbus, Ohio. So for this episode here, it's going to be a little bit shorter. Time got away from me, and I also had a film that was a little bit longer than I was expecting. So what we have here is this is going to be my Scouring Through the Sixes number 16. So my featured reviews are going to be, first, the controversial Ice Cream Man here from 2026. And I'm going to pair that up with the Spiral Staircase from 1946. So this double feature is kind of interesting because we have a proto-slasher as a whodunnit with Spiral Staircase. Ice Cream Man is a more modern, bloodier take on the slasher subgenre, so it makes for an interesting little double feature there to discuss. So then for mini reviews here, I only have two features here, and it's going to be Children of the Corn 4, The Gathering, and then Never Hike Alone, The Ghost Cut. So like I said, things got away from me here. The Ghost Cut, I didn't realize, is actually combining everything from Womp Stomp Films. So I just went ahead and watched that version. I will actually kick out the Scouring Through the Sixes 2026 rewatch. I'll do that on next week, so I'll do two of those over there. And then Children of the Corn 4 is from 1996, so that is going to be my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch. But I will end my mini reviews out with 2 episodes of 100 Years of Horror. So that's all I have here then for this intro, outside of saying thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy coming on this journey with me.
Welcome to Camp Cringe, streaming on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
The school bus arrives at Camp Sawiki Wiki for its annual summer camp.
What the hell is your problem, lady? Do you need something, or are you just trying to ruin my vibe?
My name is Tony. Are you hurt?
You kids shouldn't be out here playing with fire.
Does anyone else see that creepy lady following Nevea? Or is it just me? Yo, what is that noise?
Remember, God is watching!
Welcome to Camp Cringe, man. We're so screwed.
New episodes every 25th of the month.
Listen, here's the truth. If it's not something you love to do, automation is mandatory. You didn't start your podcast to spend hours editing clips. You started it to create, connect, and grow your audience. But here's the problem. Every other platform works with video podcasts, and manual editing eats up your most valuable asset, your time. That's where Opus Clip changes everything. Upload your video, and Opus Clip will automatically find the gold nugget moments, auto-clip the captions for the best parts, perfect for TikTok, Reels, and Shorts. 1 hour long episode becomes 10, 20, even 30 viral-ready clips in minutes. The tool even predicts each clip's viral potential, so you know exactly what to post. No more tenuous editing, no more wasted hours, just you staying in the place that you love to be, creating content that matters. Head to podnationopus.com for your free trial and get back to doing what you do best, Stop editing and start creating now.
And for my first mini review here is going to be my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch here of Children of the Corn for The Gathering. This is from 1996, directed by Greg Spence, who co-wrote this with Stephen Berger. Now, this is loosely based on the original short story by Stephen King. This is starring Naomi Watts, Jamie Renee Smith, and Karen Black. This is a supernatural slasher horror thriller film from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 4.3 on IMDb and Letterboxd at 2.2. Synopsis: all the kids in a town overnight become feverish and have convulsions. The next day, they start to become evil as a boy preacher tries to turn them against their parents. So when I was in college, I had sought this one out because I had liked the original. I might have seen this one on VHS while I was in high school, but I distinctly remember seeing it in my first apartment. So at the time, though, I thought it was all right, quite forgettable. I've now revisited this as part of my Scouring Through the Sixes, like I was saying. So let's actually kind of jump into a little bit here of what we're getting. And so what I like is this backstory we have with this character of Josiah. He is a boy preacher, and we get to learn a little more that he might be back from the dead, something along those lines. He's portrayed by Brandon Kalea. So, though, kind of give a little bit more backstory here is that we start this off with June Rhodes, portrayed by Karen Black. She's agoraphobic, and she is not doing too well. So, Dr. Robert Larson, portrayed by William Wyndham, is trying to take care of her. Now, June's daughter of Grace, portrayed by Naomi Watts, comes back to the area. Now, she has two younger siblings of Margaret, portrayed by Smith, and then James, portrayed by Mark Saling. So, she's coming back here to help and make sure everything kind of gets back on track. She's going to medical school, though, so she got out of town. So Josiah, though, getting back to him, he was a boy when his family abandoned him. He was taken in by tent revival preachers. They train him to do the same thing. He's quite the draw and makes him a lot of money. They then do horrible things that kind of really bothered me, like giving him Quicksilver to stay young, which I guess is just mercury. It also makes sense why he's back from the dead for revenge. So on the negative side, though, this fails as a sequel to Children of the Corn. It ignores Gatlin, Nebraska, the original events, anything like that. It also doesn't even use He Who Walks Behind the Rose. This is likely an unrelated script rebranded by Dimension to preserve franchise rights, but it would work better as a standalone film, but it disappoints as a sequel. What is a shame is that a bit more care could have been included to tie it back into those elements from the source material. The curse that we get here has some different things that we learn to tie back in with the town, which strengthen this as well. Now, something that's interesting is the approach here of science versus supernatural. Grace and Dr. Rob are trying to make sense of the affliction that comes down to all the children of the town. Grace runs a blood test, and the results don't necessarily make sense. It isn't until Donald Atkins, portrayed by Brent Jennings, pushes her to consider there is something that isn't explainable happening. She starts to consider the duality. I also appreciate how Josiah's past mirrors the backstory in the present. The movie explores hidden sins, maternal sacrifice, and the loss of bodily autonomy. The contrast between Dr. Rob dismissing the children's illness as the flu and Grace trying to find the answers highlights his rigid mindset. Additionally, it addresses exploitative religion and misguided zealotry, reoccurring themes in this franchise. So that's where it does kind of fall into place there. So that should be enough for story. Let's go over the actor performance. Overall, I'd say it's hit or miss. Watts was fine in her lead role. This is before she really blew up as an actress, and her performance was solid. Smith was good as well. She's a cute kid, and her role in this film was interesting. I felt that Black was underutilized, and she came off a little bit flat. The rest of the acting, it works for what was needed. I'm guessing the bigger issue here stems from the writing. So regarding the filmmaking, the cinematography and framing are solid. They effectively capture the small town setting, building dread as adults fail to notice the dangers. The practical effects were good. There's some solid blood and occasional brutality. However, the editing has its drawback due to these quick cuts and fuzzy focus. The music and sound design fit appropriately without necessarily standing out. In conclusion, this functions as a standalone religious cult horror film that explores interesting ideas while featuring solid cinematography and practical effects, but ultimately fails as a sequel due to its sharp disconnect from the established franchise lore. With mixed performances and weak writing, it struggles to leave a lasting impression. This would be one that either needed to be developed more to fit the series or have done its own thing. So my rating, though, for Children of the Corn 4: The Gathering, I give this one a 5.5 out of 10. Then my next mini review here is going to be Never Hike Alone, the Ghost Cut from 2020, directed between Vicente DeSanti and Renee Rivas, and then DeSanti and Nathan McLeod are the ones that did the writing here. The original writers are giving credit to Sean S. Cunningham, Ron Kurz, Tom McLaughlin, and Victor Miller for coming up with like characters as well as like story and stuff. So this is starring Anna Campbell, DeSanti, and Robert Dubois. What I'd also say Tom Matthews is a very important part of this as well as I'm also going to give credit here to who is Vincent Faro, I think that's how you say your name. I do apologize if it isn't. But the genres here, slasher, horror, and adventure. This is from the United States. It is currently rated on a 7.2 on IMDb. Now, Letterboxd has deleted this due to being a fan film. So the synopsis, Tommy Jarvis is still haunted by his ordeal with Jason Voorhees. He keeps an eye out on Camp Crystal Lake, much to the chagrin of the local sheriff. When a hiker, Kyle McLeod, stumbles into the area, Tommy tries to stop this haunting figure once and for all. So Tommy Jarvis is Matthews. Then Jason is actually portrayed by a couple people here. One of them is going to be DeSanti. There's another guy here as Brian Forrest, also portrays this character. And then Kyle is portrayed by Drew Leighty. So the previous reviews here, I've done Never Hike in the Snow as a mini review on episode 57, so if you want to go hear a little bit more over there. But so my history here is that the original Never Hike Alone came out and I watched it. I have seen it a couple more times, actually once of them on the big screen at the Nightmares Film Festival. I then watched Never Hike in the Snow when that came out. Since both are shorter in length, I believe that I had said on social media that I'd be interested in seeing them edited together. Something has gone by, and I actually was told by the people over at Womp Stomp, I believe that's how you guys say it, is that they actually had this out there. So this here includes Disappear, which is a music video, Never Hike Alone 2 as well. And then, so I'm treating this as a journey through the aughts. And I was like, say, Never Hike Alone and Never Hike in Snow is also incorporated in here if that didn't make sense. So where I'm going to go ahead and start is pointing out my confusion. Now, while I set it in to watch this, my plan was just to watch Disappear, Never Hike Alone, and Never Hike in the Snow. I've seen the latter two, and I've never seen Disappear. I saw this cut was like 150 minutes, so I was like, okay, that's interesting. So Never Hike Alone, that segment was the ending, or like when that ended, I was like, why is there still an hour left in this? And then I ended up figuring out Never Hike Alone 2 is at the end of this. So it took care of my next watch for that section of the list. So yeah, here we are. Now that out of the way, I have to credit DeSanti and Womp Stomp team. You can truly see how much they care about the Friday the 13th franchise. DeSanti would be somebody that I think should be tapped to direct a film if the rights can ever get figured out. Originally, I thought that Never Hike Alone was ignoring most of the franchise. I see now that they're actually acknowledging everything besides Jason X and Freddy vs. Jason. The former, though, would be easy since that takes place in the future. I appreciate incorporating as much of the lore as possible. So at its core, this is a solid slasher film. Unlike many works in the subgenre, these shorter works keep things moving, and it doesn't fall in that trapping of being too much of a slow burn. I appreciate the likable characters, the clear introductions, and the heart shown as Jason just devastates people and their loved ones, a fitting theme given his and his mother's history. So this film also modernizes the series through found footage, starting with Kyle, who's a vlogger and uses a GoPro to capture a cat and mouse struggle in the woods against the primal threat of Jason. It also explores themes of like unresolved obsession and legacy through Tommy, as well as the character of Diana Hill, who is portrayed by Campbell, following Mark's fate alongside the unforgiving power of nature. So moving on to the acting, Leighty is great here as Kyle. Convincingly portraying a blogger, and his dynamic with Jason works well. DeSanti and Forrest bring impressive physical presence to Jason. Campbell's storyline is engaging, supported by Gordon as her son, and that'd actually be Cortland. Gordon is playing the Mark character, and then he serves as a catalyst for her involvement. Matthews excels in reprising Tommy, and having Gastafaro, who played the deputy in Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives, highlights their long-standing conflict. The rest of the cast round us out for what was needed. Also have to be the filmmaking aspects. The cinematography and framing are good. Being able to capture the spirit of Camp Crystal Lake, which has long since been abandoned, is good. I love the nods to the events from films as it adds charms to the long-standing fans. Incorporating found footage and snowy landscapes is good. Shifting to the effects, these are done mostly practical and they look great. I love how brutal this goes at times. I'd also say that despite not being able to use the iconic theme, the music and the sound design does help build the atmosphere. So in conclusion, this serves as a passionate and well-crafted tribute to the Friday the 13th series. By successfully modernizing the franchise through effective use of found footage, solid pacing, and strong performances, DeSanti and the Womp Stomp team have created a slasher experience that feels both fresh and respectful in their original lore. With the impressive practical effects, atmospheric sound design, and genuine appreciation for the source material, this collection stands as a must-watch for fans of the genre, in my opinion. So my rating here, then, for Never Hike Alone, the Ghost Cut, is going to be a 7.5 out of 10. And I have two episodes here of 100 Years of Horror. So episode number 23 is going to be Mad Doctors. and this is looking at horror movie portrayals of mad scientists. This is something that Christopher Lee says in the beginning, is that they have different types of these ones. Some could be benevolent but misguided. Some are just flat out insane. So then they really talk about like one of the first films that would do this type of trope would be Dr. X from 1932. This had starred Lionel Atwill. And then there's one that's Terror is a Man. I have not seen that one. The Bat kind of falls in this one. Vincent Price was in that film. And then we have like Mad Monster, where George Zucco is actually creating a creature and everything, and that is going to be Glenn Strange is taking on that role. We have an interview here from Turhan Bey, who was talking about working with Zucco and how he just gave high praise and told him not to really worry too much about it, just kind of do what you can and just let the script and everything kind of do most of the work for you. And then once plastic surgery, it started after World War I, from people coming home and everything like that with deformities, and this concept was used in like Black Dragons. I've seen that one with Bela Lugosi in it. We get an interview here from Fred Olen Ray. Then they talk about like the human monster and the ape man that had Bela in it. Bela Jr. kind of gets to talk about some of this stuff, where I believe it was the ape man that his father might have actually been a director on. I have a note in here somewhere about that, so if it does come back up, I will point it out. But then The Devil Commands is an interesting one here. This one uses radio waves to contact the dead, that has Karloff in it. And then we actually get to hear Christopher Lee talking about working with Boris Karloff. That was fun stuff to hear there. Now, Hugh Hefner actually made a film back in 1942. I think it was called Return from the Dead. I couldn't find anything about this one officially. It was a short film from what they were saying. Then there's like The Frozen Dead. This is a Nazi mad doctor. Dana Andrews is in that film. We have She Demons from 1958. That also has Nazis. And then they bring up things like with Eyes Without a Face. And then Peter Cushing was in a lot of these type of films. There was one called Mania they bring up. Then there's one with like Burke and Hare, and then Dr. Knox. And then there's Scream and Scream Again. This one actually featured Vincent Price, Christopher Lee, and Peter Cushing. And then they start to wind out this thing here. There's Dr. Phibes. That's a wild one. And then there's Dr. Phibes Rise Again. That's a great little one there with Vincent Price. Both those films are. Then they talk about like how wild looking like the Mad Doctor of Blood Island is. And then H.G. Wells should get credit here as well for some things like the Island of Dr. Monroe. There's been a few different adaptations of that story. So my rating here then for this episode was a 7 out of 10. And then for episode number 24 here is going to be Man-Made Monsters. This examines movies featuring man-made monsters like The Fly and The Golem. So The Golem is actually one of the first in the subgenre. So they actually have an interview here from writer-director Michael Curtis, and he points out that Jewish lore is not very common when it comes to, being adapted to film and everything like that, but The Golem was a major influence on films that would come after it. It's kind of interesting. I don't remember. I've seen it a long time ago, but this one, I believe, is actually defeated by the innocence of a child. And they talk about like the Colossus of New York. There's a human brain inside of a monster there. An interesting concept as well back in the atomic age, Cold War, is a computer waking up and attacking humans who try to stop it. This was Colossus, the Forbin Project, I think that's what it was called. Then they actually talk about actual transplants when those actually were successfully done. Presents new ideas like the incredible two-headed transplant. This is a fun concept about childhood here from like Roger Corman, about how like you see a monster, you think you do, and you tell your parents and they tell you that it's not real, but you don't trust them until you become an adult yourself. And they talk about Rabid. This is causing monsters from chemicals. Those ones are very zombie-like. Then The Fly is another idea here. This is one from 58. It was actually panned, I guess, but sparked multiple sequels from it. The Phantom Creep. This is on my list here for since it features Bela Lugosi. This is actually a giant robot that he controls called the Iron Man, but it also has a weird device here where it can turn Bela invisible. And actually, they do an interesting thing here where we get to see this playing out in the film where the co-star has to leave the frame for him to go to invisible or to come back. So they're clearly using like some time-lapse footage there. So then we also have like the Atomic Monster. This stars Lon Chaney Jr. as the creature that is created here, and Lionel Atwill as the mad scientist. This was actually Chaney's first horror film, which is kind of interesting there. Then they bring up the Captive Wild Woman series. This was for like the Universal, like the classic run here. This was the last of the creatures with the makeup and everything. Then they bring up Murders in the Rue Morgue and Bela Lugosi meets a Brooklyn gorilla. He actually wasn't fond necessarily of the latter one just because of his co-stars weren't always that great here. This is something that his son actually brings up. And then The Indestructible Man with Lon Chaney Jr. as well. This one was actually reworking The Man-Made Monster. So actually, there's an interview here from D.P. Smith. He was an actor who ended up being friends with Lon Chaney, but he did joke back when he was 10 years old when that film was being made, and it actually offended Lon. But it did seem like because of kind of how things kind of played out there, they ended up becoming lifelong friends until Lon had passed away, and he was heavy in his drinking at that point, which was kind of sad to hear some of that. So this one I also gave a 7 out of 10 to. So that's all I'm going to do here then for mini reviews. Let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my first featured review.
Someone hurt my mommy. Who? Me.
Man.
Oh my God! You guys see that weird ice cream man today?
What do you mean weird?
He just kept popping up, like he was following me. Is everyone sick or something? Marcella! Marcella!
Back to your classroom. What is going on here?
This isn't funny! Jesus fucking Christ! What have you done?
That ice cream's demonic. They're not trying to kill us. They're trying to turn us. We have to run.
You can't just kill him. You have to cut his head off.
Kids.
And for my first featured review here is going to be Ice Cream Man from 2026, directed by Eli Roth, who co-wrote this with Noah Belson. This stars Charlie Seltzer, Ari Millen, and Sarah Abbott, while also having the likes here of Eli Roth also appears in this, Karen Cliche, Benjamin Byron Davis, Darren Barker, Karina Batrick, Dylan Halko, Kiori Mirza Waldman, Charlie Story, Ryan Allen, Rodrigo Fernandez Stoll, Luke Dietz, Alex Armbuster, Shiloh O'Reilly, Lorenzo Antonucci, and Haley Kittle. This is a body horror, dark comedy, slasher, splatter, zombie thriller film that is from a co-production of the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, France, and Japan. This is currently sitting on a 3.8 on IMDb and a 1.5 on Letterboxd, with the synopsis being: an idyllic summer town descends into madness when an ice cream man serves kids sweet delights with horrifying results. So this is the one where the reputation preceded it. At first, it was getting buzz due to being co-written and directed by Roth. Now, he's a filmmaker that I respect for his knowledge of the genre. He truly loves it, and I know there are people out there that don't like him due to like language he includes in his films or how male characters tend to act. It doesn't help that he came out ahead of this film to admit that it has AI was being used for scenes. Regardless, I like to judge for myself, so I caught this at the Gateway Film Center, as you can tell here, making it a featured review. And actually, before I jump into anything, let's do the featured notes here and look at the key people, and starting with the polarizing Roth. He has directed 10 features and 11 shorts. I've seen 8 of what he's done for 80%. The 2 that I'm missing right now are Borderlands and The House with Clocks in the Walls. So in horror, he's done 8. I've seen 7. This includes Hostel 1 and 2, Thanksgiving, which I have covered here, Knock Knock, Green Inferno, Cabin Fever, and now this. The only thing that I'm missing is The House with the Clocks in the Walls, or whatever that title is. So that's what I was saying there. I did not do that real quick, but it's going to be, I've seen 88% of his horror output. Then for him as a writer, he has 9 films and 12 shorts. I've seen 6. They are all in the genre here, of course, where they're similar to everything that he directed. The missing one would be the Cabin Fever remake. I believe Ty West directed that one. So the co-writer is going to be Belson. This is his feature film debut, and he did do a short as well ahead of this. Or it might have been after this, not really sure. So then to the cast, we'll start with Millen. He's been in 18 motion pictures and 5 shorts. I've seen him in 4 things. Everything looks to be in genre, as he has 11 total in horror. I've seen Undertone, Vicious Fun, This, and Darken. Top 3 that I'm missing are going to be The Oak Room, I'll Take Your Dead, and Monster Brawl. Then there's Seltzer. He's been in 4 features and 2 shorts. First of his stuff that I've seen, and in genre. Last, I'll look at Abbott. She's been in 12 works. First that I've seen. She's done 3 in genre, though. I have not seen The Silence or The Spirit in the Blood. All right, then. So for this film here, we start by doing what the synopsis originally said. We get a lay of this small town. We see a sign saying its name as an ice cream truck enters. We then go over to a park where we meet most of our characters. There's children playing baseball or just playing games and stuff. There's a duo here that are filming themselves doing a TikTok type dance, stuff like that. They're, younger girls. Probably in that preteen era, or maybe even just early teens, whatever. Like I said, there's a baseball game going on. So we have Jared, portrayed by Seltzer. He is playing in the outfield. His best friend is in the infield telling him to pay attention. Now that friend is going to be Elliot, portrayed by Dietz. The kid up to bat and the catcher, I feel like they're both bullies, so they're giving each other, going back and forth. The umpire has to kind of tell them to keep their heads in the game and everything like that. But it ends with Jared missing the catch, and it costs them the game. So the ice cream man, portrayed by Millen, has parked and everybody comes to get some sweet treats. Fun fact here is that Jared is lactose intolerant. He goes to eat something that was given to him as kind of in jest, but ice cream tastes good. So he's stopped by his older sister, though, of Lizzie, portrayed by Abbott. So before they leave, there's actually an interesting thing here where he notices the different creatures almost, or the different ideas here for the different pops you can get. It's kind of interesting because growing up for me, it would be Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, SpongeBob, crazy stuff like that. This one though has actually specific animals. There's a scorpion, I think is one, a frog. This comes into play later. But Jared and Lizzie leave. They go to a local hardware store. It is there that we meet Chris, portrayed by Hauko. He and Lizzie used to be a couple, but she found him to be dumb, so they broke up, and he's still interested in her, though. Things of note from here would be that Jared was supposed to hang out with Elliot, but his mother tells him that her son isn't feeling well. Jared almost has his bike stolen by a bully named Sebastian, portrayed by Sonam Kalsang. Now, Elliot's mother does interrupt this. Jared also sees Mia, portrayed by Waldman. She's vomiting up the ice cream that she just ate. Something weird also happens when Jared's phone has a video cut in, showing a cartoon video of the ice cream mascot from the truck. He is leading a group of kids. They're singing this theme song as well, which was quite catchy. We then shift to the home of Jared and Lizzie as they have dinner with their parents. Marty, portrayed by Roth, and Allison, portrayed by Cliché, have a good time with their kids. Lizzie wants to borrow the car the next day so she can participate in skipping school. She is denied. The reason is that the parents they're both lawyers, I believe, at the local law firm, and they have to go to Boston. Lizzie needs to be there for Jared. Now, something strange happens that night. The ice cream truck comes around through the neighborhood playing its song. Anyone who ate any of the treats that is a child wakes up and kills their parents. It doesn't stop there the next morning, though. They continue their rampage. They do seem to almost go dormant, though, when they get to school. That is until the ice cream man shows up there, causing the children to cause even more destruction and kill any adult that gets in their way. Jared, Mia, and a troublemaker of Tommy, portrayed by O'Reilly, must find a way out before they're turned. So that's really my recap and introduction of the characters. Where I want to start would be saying that I understand the hate this film is getting, and I do think it's over the top, though. Is it great by any stretch? No. I'd say the filmmaking behind it's fine. It is a mean-spirited film where we have children killing their parents, reminding me of something like Children of the Corn. Another would be the film Cooties, especially because it being in a school for a good portion of it. And you also have the children being in a zombie-like state. This one's kind of interesting because it's due to eating ice cream and then hearing this jingle from the ice cream man. There are a couple more references as well that I will swing around to and get to as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and include the trivia here that I found on the IMDb page. It's stating that this is a standalone concept. It isn't a remake of Ice Cream Man from 1995. Something interesting there, though, if memory serves, that film references the folktale of the Pied Piper. There's a direct reference in this one as well, and I mean, with images and sequence that we get to see, especially since all the children are following the Ice Cream Man. The other was that it isn't an expansion of the We All Scream for Ice Cream. I haven't seen that one, so I can't comment further. So I credit the film's narrative premise. Subverting fond memories of the ice cream man, it appears overly nice despite his unsettling smile. I enjoy the mean-spirited concept of children killing their parents, which functions as like a high-octane inversion of mom and dad. There's also this expanded story where they meet this priest portrayed by Davis. He provides the backstory on how to defeat the ice cream man. I won't spoil things here, but what was done there, I thought it was good with the writing because it sets up the climax, and I actually believe that flashback sequence might be where they use the AI, and if that's the case, it wasn't very long, and yeah. So key themes to include would be the corruption of nostalgia and childhood innocence. The parents' terrifying wake-up situation highlights a subplot where the sins of the father are being revisited through the children. Additionally, this explores like failing institutions targeting outsiders, adult blindness enabling the kids to strike, hive mind violence, and a dark critique of suburban conformity. So moving to the performances, you don't need high caliber acting, and it's not necessary here. Despite noticeable plot holes where like pursuers inexplicably miss the hiding like main group, the cast delivers. Zeltzer, Abbott, and their group turn in good work, while Halko has an interesting character arc for his setup. The spellbound children are solid, and Millen is terrifyingly eerie with his stoic presence. I'd also say that Roth, Cliché, the other parents, and Davis, who helps establish the backstory, they all fulfill their roles effectively. So regarding the filmmaking, I dislike Roth's use of AI, though I didn't notice where it was used as much. A bigger issue would be the poor CGI blood. However, the gore and the kills are mean-spirited and effective, supported by like solid cinematography, framing, sound design, fitting music. Notably though, this has a song sung by children in homage to the birds. That recreation of the scene made me laugh, and it actually made me sit up in my seat at the theater. So the theme with the bird from the crystal plumage is also used here. So in general, I'd say that this aspect of the film is done well enough. So in conclusion, while there has its share of flaws, most notably the controversial use of AI and some questionable CGI, it remains an effective, unapologetically mean-spirited horror experience, bolstered by a strong narrative premise and serviceable performances from its cast. The film delivers enough tension and genre-savvy flair to satisfy. Another gripe would be the conveniences for certain things to happen. I was entertained. For a horror fan looking for a dark, high-concept ride, it ultimately proves to be a decent watch, in my opinion. So my rating here for The Ice Cream Man from 2026, I gave a 6 out of 10. Not going to do a spoiler section. There's not anything I need to necessarily delve into deeper there, so let me go ahead then and get you over to the trailer of my second featured review.
The Spiral Staircase, starring Dorothy McGuire, George Brent, and Ethel Barrymore. With Kent Smith, Rhonda Fleming, Gordon Oliver, Elsa Lanchester, Sarah Allgood, and Reese Williams. A flawless cast acting a story of flawless fascination, giving full range to the artistry of Dorothy McGuire in a role so unusual, so compelling, so fraught with emotional power, no other actress would dare play it. An inspiring portrayal, destined to become her most distinguished screen triumph.
Helen, I don't want to frighten you, but because of what happened in town today, we have to be especially careful for the next few days. If you see anything outside of this house, or even in it, that makes you suspicious, I want you to let me know. And don't hesitate to call me at any hour if you need help.
The Spiral Staircase is an absorbing, dramatic experience of such gripping conflict, artful suspense, and daring realism as to make it a screen achievement unlike anything you've ever seen.
And for my second featured review is going to be The Spiral Staircase from 1946, directed by Robert Sotomac. This was written by, the screenplay at least, by Mel Donnelly, and then the original writer here was Ethel Lena White. This is starring Dorothy McGuire, George Brent, and Ethel Barrymore, as well as Kent Smith, Rhonda Fleming, Gordon Oliver, Elsa Lanchester, Sarah Allgood, Reese Williams, James Bell, Ervil Alderson, Ellen Corby, Myrna Dell, George Holmes, Stanley Price. Sodomak is also making an uncredited appearance. Richard Tyler and Charles Wagenheim. This is a psychological thriller, whodunit, drama, mystery, horror film that is from the United States. It is currently sitting on a 7.3 on IMDb and a 3.6 on Letterboxd, with our synopsis being: a homicidal maniac stalks a mute young woman in a remote New England mansion. So this is a film that I discovered when I was compiling my list for 1946. What intrigued me here was seeing that this was directed by Sodomak, who I've seen a couple of his works previously because he did some Universal stuff. Looking at the cast list, I was also intrigued here to see that this is a co-star of Ethel Barrymore, and it also featured Lanchester. So other than that information and lining up that I had the correct film, I did come into this one blind. So let's do some featured notes, though, and I'll start with the director of Sodomak. I've seen a few of his works, like I said. He has helmed 59 features in one short. I've seen 3. Cobra Woman isn't considered horror according to Letterboxd, so I've seen 2 of 3 in genre that he's done. I've seen The Son of Dracula. I'm just missing The Dark Mirror from 1946, which, looking at everything, that should be coming up here soon. So there's also assistant director here of Harry Scott. He did this for 17 works. I've now seen 2. The only 2 that he did in genre would be this one and The Body Snatcher with Boris Karloff. So next is going to be the writer of the screenplay, and that's going to be Donnelly. He has done this for 11 films in one short, first that I've seen of his works. Also wrote the 1961 version of the story, so that's the only 2 he did in genre, is actually this tale. Now, White wrote the original work, and there are 7 adaptations of what she has done. Not horror would be The Lady Vanishes that I've seen from 1938. That is Alfred Hitchcock, I believe. Has 5 in genre. I have not seen The Unseen, The Lady Vanishes from 2013, and there are 2 other versions of the story from 1975 and 2000 as well that I've not watched. Now to our cast, we're going to start with Maguire. She's been in 42 movies and 5 shorts. First of her works that I've seen, did one other one in genre with, it was in 1972 and it's called She Waits. Then her co-star of Brent has been in 89 motion pictures and 13 shorts. First of his works that I've seen, only foray into horror. Next is Barrymore, who is the sister to John and Lionel Barrymore. She was in 37 features and 5 shorts. I've seen 2. Now, she did work with Hitchcock with The Paradigm Case. I have seen that. This was her only horror film, though. I also wanted to give credit here to Lanchester, since she is horror royalty as the Bride of Frankenstein. She was in 61 films and 18 shorts. I've seen her in 4 for 6% of what she's done. Now, I've seen her in The Ghost Goes West. That's a horror film, or kind of loosely a horror film, but I've also seen her in Arnold from 1973. I'm just missing Willard and Terror in the Wax Museum. I've seen 60% of her horror output at this time. All right, for this movie here, though, I should lead off here by saying it takes place in 1916. We're in a remote New England town, like the synopsis said. So we have Helen, portrayed by Maguire. She goes to she works at a local mansion, and I'm guessing it's kind of like a maid. Now, she's mute. She is at a picture show in a house, and upstairs we see a woman come home. There's somebody hiding in the closet, and they kill her. I actually wanted to share here that it sounds like the silent film that was being shown here at the cinema in the beginning is actually D.W. Griffith's The Sands of Dee from 1912, and it stars Mae Marsh and Robert Herron. But back to this one, though. Like I said, somebody upstairs, there's somebody hiding in a closet, they come out and kill this woman. Now, the constable, portrayed by Bell, is shown to the room, and he starts to look at the evidence. The local doctor is Harvey, portrayed by Alderson. There's another younger doctor who stops by, of Dr. Perry, portrayed by Smith. Now, he butts heads with the other doctor. Dr. Perry has taken a liking to Helen and offers her a ride back to the Warrens. That's where she lives and works. So this is cut short when a boy begs him to look at his father, who is ill. Dr. Perry doesn't want to step on the toes of Dr. Harvey, but he also cannot refuse. Should also point out here that due to this time and like how this is... the time in this little village here, they still use horse and carriage. So Helen walks the rest of the way home. Before she can make it, a storm rolls in. She takes her key from her pocket and then drops it. We see that as she does this, there's somebody watching her. They come out as she runs by, but they are too late. It is inside that we end up meeting the rest of the people here. We have Mrs. Oates, portrayed by Lanchester. She's the cook. She is married to the handyman, Mr. Oates, portrayed by Williams. The matriarch is bedridden. That's Mrs. Warren, portrayed by Barrymore. Now, she has a nurse. These two don't get along. She actually prefers to talk to Helen. So this one, her name is Baker, and she is Sarah Allgood, and I've seen her in a handful of things here and there. So now, the man who runs things here is almost like he's not technically the patriarch, but he does run the household, is Professor Warren, portrayed by Brent. His half-brother is Steve, portrayed by Oliver. So the woman upstairs is his mother, so it'd be Steve's mother. Professor Warren has Blanche, who is portrayed by Fleming. She works as his secretary or something along those lines. She and Steve share mutual feelings, and they try to keep them hidden from the professor. All these people are under this roof for this evening. Now, the constable does come out to warn the professor about the most recent murder. There have now been 2. Both of them have been women with physical ailments, so the fear is that Helen would be next since she is mute. It is from there that we learn a bit more about what is happening to her to cause this affliction. Dr. Perry comes to check on Mrs. Warren. She wants him to take Helen away from here for her protection. She even gets very rude towards Helen in order to make her leave. Mrs. Warren shares something that she saw when she was younger, a murder that she kept quiet. We see that the killer is in the house and nobody is safe. So that's really my recap action of the characters. Where I want to start is that this is an interesting little murder mystery film. Part of it is that it is set 30 years prior to the year that it was made. I like the isolated location of this small New England town. Horse and buggy are the most common way to get around in this area. So, I mean, cars would have been around from my understanding or my belief here, but I wouldn't say that it's a poor area. It's just a simple place. Seems like agriculture would be the primary industry. Then having a stormy night trapping our characters inside and it being a manor, the killer has room to move around. Then sticking with this killer, this becomes a whodunit. We know that more than likely it's a male. Partially that would be common for the era. It does make me think that this could have been a partial inspiration for Black Christmas because multiple times we focus on the killer's eye. We even do this cool zoom in early on where it then shifts to the point of view shot with the first victim watching her from the closet, looking out of the eyes of the killer. That was a good touch. Then they also build red herrings that fit, so credit there. An interesting element is that the first 2 victims have physical ailments, sets the stage for Helen to be next. There are stories, though, that Dr. Perry and Mrs. Warren have about the past that are slightly confusing. The concept of her muteness being psychosomatic works well. Dr. Perry's desire to help her create is a satisfying subplot with a look at like trauma processing and reclaiming agency. So other key themes here would be like voyeurism and the male gaze, foreshadowing elements that would define later giallo and slasher films. The large neo-Gothic manor feels increasingly oppressive, constrained by the killer and Mrs. Warren. Additionally, the killer's targeting of disabled women reflects themes of eugenics and social Darwinism, a resonant motive released just after the atrocities of World War II were kind of really truly coming to light. So moving away from the story, let's go to the acting. Maguire delivers a strong lead performance, skillfully using facial expressions and body language to convey her harrowing, mute struggle for help. Brett and Oliver effectively portray competing brothers, while Barrymore excels as the bedridden matriarch. The supporting cast, including like Smith, Fleming, Lanchester, Allgood, Williams, Bell, and Alderson, they solidify and they fulfill their roles well. All that's left over for some more trivia is going to be filmmaking aspects. Cinematography and framing are good, to capture the setting, at least. From the town that seems like it's stuck in the past, even for, the time that it is set, then we build up the storm that traps our characters was good. It has elements of old dark house films without fully being in the genre, or that subgenre, I guess. Having a killer trapped inside with them was a good touch. It's also a bit mean-spirited with who is being targeted. I wouldn't have expected that. It is limited in the effects, but it's also kind of, I would assume, due to the era that this is set in as well, as another major factor there. So some interesting stuff here that I found in the trivia is that the novel that White wrote, Some Must Watch, there are major differences here. So the novel was written in 1933. That was a maid stalked by a killer who's not mute. It was also contemporary England, not the 1900s New England. And the title and the idea of incorporating a spiral staircase as a thematic element comes from another source entirely, which is Mary Robert Reinhardt's 1908 novel, The Circular Staircase. The heroine of that one is not mute or crippled or any of like the murder victims. So kind of interesting the stuff that they worked into this here. And it does sound like Rhonda Fleming erroneously and repeatedly claimed that she had received a Best Supporting Actress nomination. Somebody in this film did, but it was not her. It was actually Barrymore as the family matriarch who was cited. And then it sounds like a good many plot elements were picked up and used in an unlocked window from 1965 for the Alfred Hitchcock Hour. That was an hour-long murder mystery scene, pretty much how it unfolds one evening, a dark, stormy night, takes place in an old Gothic-style house. Also, there is a seriously ill patient under a nurse's care upstairs who occasionally wakens, a drunken cook in the kitchen, a handyman who must go out in the night on an errand, and a murderer right under the roof all in one evening, not revealed till the closing moment. So I can kind of see definitely the comparisons there. Joan Crawford, after receiving critical praise for her performance in A Woman's Face from 41, at one point campaigned for the role as the mute girl, later played by Maguire. Crawford, who owned the rights, but MGM studio chief Louis B. Mayer vehemently opposed the idea, telling her, "No more cripples or maimed women." I can kind of see his spot there. This was one of RKO's biggest hits of the 40s, grossing several times what it cost to make, which looks like it was $750,000. The cast includes one Oscar winner in Barrymore, who would gain a nom for this one. There's also 4 acting Oscar nominees here: Maguire, Lanchester, Allgood, and an uncredited Ellen Corby. The Screen Directors Playhouse broadcast a 30-minute radio adaptation of this, with Maguire reprising her role. Second billed would be Brent, who doesn't appear for the first 21 minutes, and the movie itself is only 83 minutes long, so kind of putting that in perspective here. This is included in the American Film Institute's 2001 list of 400 movies nominated for the top 100 most heart-pounding American movies. 3 years later, Barrymore would play a disagreeable bedridden and dying woman in Pinky from 49. The villain in this was madly obsessed with ridding the world of imperfect human beings. The previous year, the U.S. and Allied forces had just defeated Nazi Germany, whose objective was very similar, establishing a master race devoid of people with any imperfections. And then they also, in the trivia, provide the Italian censorship visa that was awarded in 1947. In conclusion, this is an effective suspense murder mystery that maximizes the area that it's set, along with the isolated New England location, to create a chilling atmosphere. The film is bolstered by strong performances, particularly from Maguire, and offers surprising thematic depth through its exploration of psychosomatic trauma and provocative social commentary. It stands as a notable precursor to the slasher genre, blending gothic tension with a compelling whodunit structure that remains engaging today. So I rather enjoyed this one. I thought it was pretty solid, and for my rating here for The Spiral Staircase, I give this one an 8 out of 10. I'm not going to do a spoiler section, not anything I necessarily need to do there, so let me go ahead then and get you over to one last break before I close out the show.
Pod Nation TV has you beamed up with Out of This World award-winning podcast, found exclusively on Pod Nation TV. Download Pod Nation TV for Roku and Fire TV. Pod Nation TV, Out of This World.
With Rise Coffee.
And welcome back. So if you'd like to send me any sort of feedback, anything you want read on the show, or any screener requests, anything like that, you can send those to journeywithacinephile@gmail.com. If you'd like to read any of my written reviews or see any of the old past podcast episodes, all of that is being stored over at Journey with a Cinephile. That is my blog, and that's going to be horrorreview.webnode.com. If you'd like to follow me and become friends on Facebook, it's going to be David Garrett Jr. is my name over on there. There's going to be a link in the show notes. And then if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, it's going to be Buckeye from Mish. And then if you'd like to follow my Letterboxd page, where I have all of my reviews, whether that's going to be horror or non-horror, that's going to be David OSU is my name on that. Instagram and Threads, I'm David OSU87. Over on my personal Instagram page, you might see some of my family stuff every now and then whenever I remember to post something. My wife is much better at it than I am. But then if you'd like to follow the Journey with a Cinephile Instagram, that's going to be Journey with a Cinephile, all one word. And then also direct you, if you'd like, to the Discord channel. That's going to be the Nightclub Discord, but I have a page over there. And there's also some other great pages of other shows and them kind of messing around and everything like that. Do highly recommend if you want to go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing I'll actually say here, if you would like to listen to the show a day early, this is always going to be streaming over there on the Pod Nation TV app. So I will have, once again, a link in the show notes for that if that is something that you're interested in. So yeah, there's some great stuff here. There's some great shows on some of these other networks and stuff. I highly recommend checking them out. And then for my next episode, since it's another little bit of a milestone here of episode 355, I'm going to do my top horror films from 1936, now that all those have been watched, reviewed, and rated and everything like that, and I have them all compiled into a list. So then my Scouring Through the Sixes rewatch from 1996 is going to be Amityville Dollhouse. I actually used to watch this one all the time growing up, so I'm going to give that one I believe I've watched it at least once with a critical eye, so let's do that again. I have a screener here that I'm going to be checking out. I actually think I have 2 screeners here. I didn't put the other one down yet, but I know one's called The Doll Maker. There's another one that sounds like it is in the Andes, so I think it's a creature feature, but don't quote me on that. I need to figure out and remember what the title is there. But then the 2 Scouring Through the Sixes 2026 rewatches are going to be I Know Exactly How You Die and then The Plague. So I also have many more mini reviews there and everything to round everything out. So I don't think there's anything else I'm going to do here for this outro outside of saying, That wraps up this episode of Journey with a Cinephile, a horror movie podcast. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of horror cinema. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and follow along for more deep dives into the macabre. Until next time, keep watching horror, and remember, fear is just a frame away.
It had been a wonderful evening, and what I needed now to give it the perfect ending